Hello everybody and welcome back to another video on the Durham student YouTube channel. I'm Karina, I'm a second year marketing and management student, and if you haven't watched any of the videos on this channel before, welcome to the channel, and I hope you find some content that you might find helpful. Obviously, currently, if you're watching this as it's being released, we're in a bit of a crazy situation in a global pandemic, and given a lot of the changes that this is causing to end of school exams, you might be a bit unsure what's going on. So I thought I'd film for you today a video about the transition between high school or sixth form or college, whatever your sort of final school education was, and coming to university. Obviously there can be a lot of uncertainty when you're leaving school. I know I was so nervous about coming to university, and so I thought I'd just address some of the potential concerns and talk about like the ways to get through these and my experience. I think one of the first worries you have is probably leaving things behind, especially in the current situation where maybe school has ended sooner than you expected it to. You don't maybe know what's going on with your extracurriculars and things. This can be super nerve-wracking, and I had attended, before coming to uni, the same dance school for about 16 years, and leaving this was obviously incredibly difficult. But the good news is, when you come to Durham, there are so many different clubs and societies that whilst yes, it won't be the same group of people necessarily that you've always done that thing with, there's always going to be a new community to be formed. And actually, it's easier to stay in touch with that home community than you might think. Given the current situation and the fact that we can't really go out, I've actually been able to do some dance classes with my old dance school using Zoom. And so those communities, like those strong communities that you have at home, will not be lost. And this can also obviously be reflected in your friendships as well, and the worry about forming new friendships at uni. The good news is that your good friendships don't have to end just because you're leaving home. The fact of the matter is that just because you don't see those people from school every day doesn't mean those friendships are totally going to dissolve. Granted, it takes hard work and effort to keep these things going, and it isn't always easy, but I have found that even when I haven't stayed in touch with my friends for a while, whenever we come home, it does fall back into place. And if it doesn't in some places, maybe they weren't the closest friendships in the first place. But trust me when I say that your friendships, just because you don't see each other for a while, these are things that have been built up for years, and they will fall back into place. Sort of moving on from that and forming new friendships at uni can be one of the difficult parts of the transition between leaving school and moving away. And obviously it's a different support system around you, and originally, like in the first place, that might be scary, but actually because of the collegiate system we have in Durham, it's much easier to make friends than perhaps it is somewhere else. So for us, when you arrive in Freshers Week, it's not just like you get a ticket to go to all of the club nights and, and that's just how you make friends. We have so many things in place in Durham in terms of like Freshers Week in college, and so it gives you the opportunity to meet loads of people. And through the activities and things, it's quite easy to get to know people who have similar interests to you. Before coming to uni, I was really concerned because I don't particularly enjoy clubbing. I like to go out for a bit of a dance, but I don't particularly enjoy clubbing. And I was incredibly concerned about the impact this might have on me making friends. And actually hasn't had an impact at all. I think I can count on one hand the number of times I've been clubbing in Durham in the 2 years that I've been at uni. And I have a great group of friends, plenty of them, and all sorts of different people. And just because clubbing might not be your thing doesn't mean you're not going to make friends with people who that interests either. When you come to university, I find that everyone has been so much more open-minded about interests, and there's less of this thing about being cool like there was in school. And just because you're not interested in something doesn't mean you're not going to fit in. Obviously, another layer of the concerns that people have about transitioning between living at home and moving to uni can be to do with that independence and what that involves. And depending on what college you have been allocated and applied for, depends like whether you're going to be self-catered straight away or whether you're going to be catered in first year. Now, I was catered, so that meant that I didn't really have to adjust in terms of learning how to cook myself straight away. But even if you are self-catered, I've been doing all that learning to cook and everything this year, and actually I find that it's not as hard as I expected, and it's been incredibly enjoyable. Just getting a simple student cookbook actually really helps so much, because those recipes are designed for students in terms of simplicity, in terms of low cost, and in terms of like being time effective. And if you kind of batch cook, you can freeze stuff, keep stuff in the fridge. It won't take up too much of your time, because obviously time management can be different when you are living on your own and you kind of have to manage the different aspects of your day. As I touched on there with the kind of cost of food, budgeting can be a concern for some people before coming to uni, and particularly obviously if you are going to be in self-catered accommodation, this might be more of a concern. But in terms of that, it probably will actually work out more cost effective for you if you're living in self-catering for first year. So it does have its benefits as well as its drawbacks, but it just depends on your preference really. I've actually recently filmed a video for the Durham student channel about budgeting, and that will be released very shortly, either just before or just after this video. So hopefully all those budgeting tips that I have put out there, from using a reusable cup to better planning your meals, will be able to help you too. Coming to uni, obviously there will be academic differences as well, and this could be a concern depending on what you are studying. For me, I had never studied business before, and I do marketing and management, and particularly in my first year I had to take finance courses, I had to take economics courses. It had been a while since I'd done any maths, and I was really worried about actually the content of my degree, knowing that other students could have studied economics at A-level, could have studied maths, could have, they could have done business. So there was a lot of stuff that they might have an idea of that I wouldn't, and I was quite nervous about this. But actually the way the courses are designed, by the end of first term, you should have been brought up to speed. So if you haven't studied like the subject you're studying at your degree level before, by the end of first term, and most certainly by the end of first year, you won't notice the difference, and this will not have an impact on your marks. I have managed to do very well in my first year and in my second year at uni, and it is not noticeable that I didn't study that beforehand. So it's definitely not a thing to be concerned about, but obviously it can be nerve-wracking because you're not sure how interested you'll be in the subject, or how smoothly everything will go. And granted, you will have to put in hard work, but trust me, it's super manageable. Another thing, depending on what qualifications you took before coming to uni, whether you did A-levels, IB, AP exams, or any other exam you might have done, can be the differences in terms of the coursework to exam ratio you have. Now obviously for different courses this can vary, and for my course this year I only have 2 exams and I've had tons of coursework, whereas on other degrees you might have like all exam and little coursework. So it is worth checking that out so that you're kind of prepared, but depending on where you've gone before, that nature of it might be different in terms of like a heavily weighted exam. Again, this is kind of something that you get used to along the way, and a lot of subjects provide mock examinations or formative assignments. So before you have any summative assignments, which are the ones that count, you will have formative assignments which don't count. Like, you still have to complete them to pass, but the grade doesn't matter. So this means that you can kind of get used to how the marking system works. And your tutors all have office hours, so you can go and ask them as many questions as you have to kind of get used to this as well. On top of that, your first year at Durham is a formative year, so this means that as long as you pass it, the grade that you receive doesn't count towards your degree classification. So if you get like a 2-2 in first year but you're aiming for a 2-1 overall, this won't bring your mark down. It's just kind of like a learning lesson, and I kind of didn't appreciate how important that was in my first year. I was like, oh well, why doesn't it just count from the start? Trust me, it's worth it, because it will take the pressure off a bit and it will let you learn. Among this kind of like academic concerns comes the need for self-motivated work, and depending on what subject you do, again, the amount of this you might need to do will vary. So for my degree, I only have like 7 to 9 contact hours a week, so this gives me quite a lot of time to figure out what I need to do. About 30 hours of extra work like on my own is kind of needed, and that can be really difficult, but it is so like manageable once you figure it out. So what I mean by that is, in my first term, in first year, I spent ages just like reading textbooks, reading, and it wasn't effective. I would spend like 5 hours like on each chapter of my textbooks and just like taking notes, and this isn't the most effective way to do it, and you will figure this out as you go along, and it isn't necessarily natural at the start, but like your note-taking method might change to improve your time effectiveness, or the way you kind of do your extra reading, but you'll learn what you feel like you need to dedicate most time for. So for me, in first term of first year, I dedicated a lot of time to textbook reading, and for me that wasn't the most effective. I would have been better off dedicating more time to assignments and less time to that. But you kind of develop those habits as you go along as well. If you are kind of interested in a bit more in how to plan your time at uni, again, I have another video over on my channel, so it's called Karina May, and it's all about how I plan my time at uni. And granted, this was done in first year and it is a bit different now, but in terms of basic structure, it's largely the same. Finally, the last thing that may be difficult in the transition is the need to take care of your own health. So just basic things like, obviously at home, your parents can provide more for you in terms of just simple things like when you've got a cold, making sure that you have like painkillers in, you have throat sweets, you have tissues. You probably don't have to think about these things. And like, you do kind of need to get a bit more on top of these things, but also I've found that because there's such a caring community around you when it comes to matters of physical and mental health, there's always going to be someone to support you. We have a great support system in place in the university, between like the university counselling services, but also particularly your in-college support, because in colleges you have like different pastoral tutors kind of thing, and you have your mentors, you have academic mentors as well as your college mentors. So there's such a big support system, as well as college welfare, like student-led college welfare, that there'd always be someone to guide you on like matters of physical and mental health, and help you organise that. So that's kind of everything I wanted to touch on today in this video, but obviously if you have more questions, feel free to comment them down below. I know people probably have quite a lot of questions right now, and I'm more than happy to make more videos addressing those if you have any particular topics that like need a lot to cover, or even if it's just a small question, comment it below and I'll be able to answer it. I hope you're all well, and that the current crazy situation isn't affecting you too badly, and we hopefully will see you soon with another video. Bye guys!